Carrollton, Georgia, a small, peaceful town where the nights were supposed to be quiet, and danger was something that only existed on television screens. But on the warm evening of August 12, 2000, that illusion shattered. Beneath the calm hum of crickets and the faint rustle of trees, a nightmare unfolded inside a small ranch-style home on a quiet street. A home that belonged to Laneshia Crowder, a 21-year-old mother with dreams bigger than her tiny town. Laneshia was known for her radiant smile, her infectious laughter, and her love for her two children, 7-year-old Kenneth and 2-year-old Lyric. She had spent that Saturday just like any other, visiting her mother, running errands, and tucking her kids into bed after a long day. But what no one knew was that while the world slept, evil slipped through the cracks of her safety. By Monday night, the silence from Laneshia's home had become deafening. Concerned neighbors would soon stumble upon a scene that could freeze the blood in anyone's veins. Laneshia lying lifeless on her bedroom floor, her toddler clinging to her still body, and her young son barely alive after a savage beating. Police arrived to a home drenched in confusion and horror. There were no signs of forced entry, no stolen valuables, and no clear motive. The weapon was there, but the answers were not. From that moment, Carrollton's peace was gone, replaced by whispers, suspicion, and the haunting question that lingers to this day. Who killed Laneshia Crowder? And why? This is her story. In the heart of Carrollton, Georgia, a small town where neighbors greet each other by name and secrets usually don't survive a whisper, a tragedy unfolded that would silence one of its brightest souls. Laneshia Crowder, fondly known as Lane, came into the world on July 21st, 1979, a ray of sunshine born to her loving mother, Doris. From the very beginning, Laneshia was a spark, bright, spirited, and full of laughter that could light up even the gloomiest room. She was raised by her mother, who poured into her love, discipline, and the belief that she could be anything. But life, as it often does, had its own plans. While attending Carrollton High School, Laneshia's teenage years took an unexpected turn. At just 14 or 15, she became a mother to a little boy she named Kenneth. Most would have folded under such pressure, but not Laneshia. She carried her responsibility like a crown. With the unwavering support of Doris, she managed to finish school, determined to give her son the best life possible. Her heart had room for more love, and not long after graduation, she gave birth to a second child, a little girl named Lyric. Her two children became her entire world, her rhythm, her purpose. By the dawn of the new millennium, Laneshia was a single mother, raising Kenneth, then 7, and Lyric, 2. Despite the struggles, her spirit was unbroken. She was the kind of woman who could make even strangers smile, friendly, social, and warm-hearted. Life in her small, close-knit community was simple, almost peaceful. Eventually, she met a man named Grady, and for a while, happiness found its way back into her home. Grady soon moved in with her and the kids, and together they lived in a cozy 2-bedroom ranch-style house tucked along one of Carrollton's quiet streets. It seems like things were finally falling into place, but fate, ever ironic, was about to twist that peace into heartbreak. On Saturday, August 12th, 2000, the day began like any other. Laughter, errands, and family moments that now feel like memories trapped in amber. Laneshia spent most of that Saturday out with her two children, ending the evening at her mother's home before heading back around 9 p.m. Back at their house, the air was calm. The hum of cicadas outside was the only sound in the night. Around 9:30, Laneshia tucked Kenneth and Lyric into bed, kissing them goodnight before stepping quietly into the living room. She made a few phone calls that evening, chatting with friends, her voice cheerful, unaware that these would be her last words. Her final call ended around midnight. She was alone that night. Grady, her boyfriend, was in jail on an outstanding warrant, arrested just days earlier on August 4th. And so the house fell silent under the thick Georgia night. Laneshia couldn't have known that while her children slept, death was waiting just beyond the walls, patient, cruel, and merciless. Sunday came like a shadow, slow, gray, and heavy. No one heard from Laneshia. No phone calls, no visits, no sign of life. At first, no one panicked. Maybe she was busy, maybe tired. But as hours passed, unease crept in. By Monday, the silence had turned into a scream no one could yet hear. Even Grady, calling from jail, couldn't reach her. He dialed again and again, no answer. Concern twisted into fear. Something wasn't right. So, on Monday evening, desperate for answers, he asked one of her neighbors to check on her, just to make sure everything was okay. Just before 10 p.m., the neighbor walked across the yard toward Laneshia's front door. The porch light flickered faintly, and the air was eerily still. He knocked once, twice, but there was no sound from inside. Uneasy, he circled around the house and peered through the bedroom window. And that's when his heart nearly stopped. Inside, he saw Laneshia, motionless on the floor, and lying on top of her was tiny Lyric, alive, clinging to her mother's body as if she could somehow wake her up. Frozen in disbelief, the neighbor bolted to another house, gasping for breath, yelling for someone to call 911. Moments later, the flashing red and blue lights shattered the stillness of the street. When paramedics entered, they were met with chaos that words could never truly capture. Laneshia's lifeless body lay on the bedroom floor, her face bruised, her body battered. In the next room, Kenneth, her 7-year-old son, was found barely breathing, his small body mangled by a vicious beating. Only Lyric was unharmed, at least physically, but the horror she had endured would mark her forever. Kenneth was rushed to a nearby hospital, then airlifted to a children's trauma center. He underwent emergency surgery, doctors fighting to pull him back from death's edge. When police arrived, confusion filled the air. 2 victims, 1 dead, 1 fighting to live, but no clear picture of what had happened. The scene offered more mystery than clarity. Laneshia's body showed signs of blunt force trauma, but her wounds didn't immediately seem fatal. There was no forced entry, nothing stolen, and no trace of a struggle outside. Whoever did this had walked in calmly, like they belonged there. Detectives collected evidence, including what they believed to be the murder weapon, hoping it would unlock the truth. They also took little Lyric into protective custody, fearing that if the killer discovered the children had survived, they might return to finish the job. But Lyric was only 2 years old, and she had just spent over 36 hours trapped in that house with her mother's body and her injured brother. Her tiny mind couldn't yet form the words to describe what she'd seen. Phone records later showed that Laneshia's final call ended just before midnight, leading investigators to believe she was killed in the early morning hours of Sunday, August 13th. They theorized that Kenneth was attacked next, and the killer likely assumed he was dead when they left. No signs of robbery, no forced entry, no motive. Just brutal violence in the middle of the night. As Kenneth thought through multiple surgeries, police questioned everyone close to Laneshia. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, but no one had anything bad to say about her. She wasn't involved in crime, she didn't have enemies, and she lived quietly. The autopsy confirmed what everyone feared: homicide by blunt force trauma. Laneshia, had been beaten to death. At first, detectives believed it would be a quick solve, but as weeks turned into months, the trail went cold. Her boyfriend Grady had the perfect alibi. He was behind bars. That left detectives with only one possibility. The killer was someone Laneshia knew, someone she trusted enough to open the door to. But even with physical evidence and key details withheld to protect the case, no arrests were ever made. Kenneth eventually recovered, at least physically, but his traumatic brain injury left scars deeper than any surgeon could fix. He and Lyric were placed in the care of their grandmother, Doris, who became both guardian and comforter to two broken souls. To care for them, Doris quit her job of 20 years, sacrificing everything for her grandchildren. The children were haunted by nightmares, flashes of screams, blood, and silence. Rumors soon swept through Carrollton like wildfire. Whispers in grocery aisles, murmurs at church, pointed stares on the street. Doris heard it all. People would stop her, even in front of the children, whispering things they'd heard, dropping cryptic hints that the killer was local, someone still walking freely among them. But despite the chatter, the police had nothing solid. No suspects, no person of interest, just fading hope. The case remained unsolved, and the media's silence was almost as cruel as the murder itself. While families of other victims found their stories on every headline, Laneshia's name was barely whispered. For years, Doris and her grandchildren pleaded for justice and for someone to simply care. But the world moved on, leaving them behind in a silence too heavy to carry. Then, in 2015, 15 years later, their story was finally featured in USA Today. By then, Kenneth was 22 and Lyric was a high school senior, young adults still haunted by the screams of that night. Kenneth said something that still pierces hearts to this day. "I'm glad they spared me. I was in the way then, and my mom was laying down. They were trying to hurt Lyric, so I told her to run." Lyric's voice trembled as she added, "I remember it vividly. I know their faces. I know what they were wearing." Even after all those years, their memories hadn't faded. If anything, they burned brighter. In February 2020, 11 Alive Atlanta brought Laneshia's story back into the light. It had been 20 years. Kenneth was in his late 20s, Lyric was 22, both still waiting for justice that never came. Lyric recalled that night once more. "I remember that feeling, wondering if my mom and my brother were okay. I just remember trying to comfort them afterward." But even 2 decades later, the truth remains buried. The killer, whoever they are, walks free. No new leads, no updates, no arrests. Just the echo of a mother's laughter that once filled a small Carrollton home, and 2 children who grew up chasing the shadow of a name that no one has ever spoken aloud. May her soul rest in peace.